by the time I got to my early 20s, I was like, I don't want to be alive anymore, you know. And I remember having that phone call with my mum, driving across a bridge, and I was just like, fuck it.
You've kind of touched on a lot of the education you've done in this sort of field to get you into the place you are now, but something I want to talk about, and I know you've been quite open with it on your sort of social media stuff, is your experiences specifically with the eating disorder stuff, where you could say you specialise now. That's obviously had a big impact on your life and kind of put you in a position to maybe help these people. I mean, do you want to go into kind of that and how that's kind of shaped you into
100%.
the specialty you're in now?
So late teens and early 20s, I was feeling pretty lost in life. It was quite a knock with the transition of moving from what I had thought was going to be my dream goal, getting into drama, etc., to then suddenly the rug being pulled from beneath my feet. At the same time, I was in an unhappy relationship. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't like confrontation. I didn't know how to express my needs in that context. And slowly but surely, I just found myself using food and exercise as a coping mechanism. And this is the premise for any form of eating disorder, for anyone listening, and I'm sure obviously Rini covered this in the talk that she had with you guys. Eating disorders, whilst the symptoms that are being presented include things like exercise dependency, body image related issues, restriction or overeating, the binge bulimic style cycles, the problem is nothing to do with food. Okay, the problem is that you are using those as a coping mechanism and not allowing yourself to truly address what is, I use this term by Joseph Campbell, beneath the light of your awareness. Okay, lots of people sit on things, they suppress things. And again, when we're considering this from an emotional point of view, emotions are energy in motion. That's why we call them feelings, because you feel the sensation of discomfort in your body, as well as the sensation of things like joy, happiness, etc. And so when people experience these feelings of discomfort, they don't want to go there. So now we start to formulate these external sources of alleviation. And that can be, that those can be manifested in any form of addicted style behaviors. But this is where I found myself. There was so much shit going on in my life, and I was just I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to talk openly and honestly. I didn't know how to express my emotions, especially as a man, because this is something that I spend a lot of time working with my guys on. And fast forward a few years through that eating disorder, and I was really in a sticky situation. I got to a point where I was training multiple times a day, stuck in an awful cycle of binge eating, and then various forms of purge, restrictive habits, only for that to happen again. And it was absolutely miserable. And by the time I got to my early 20s, I was like, I don't want to be alive anymore, And I remember having that phone call with my mum, driving across a bridge, and I was just like, fuck it. I could just drive off this bridge and then it's all done. Then I don't have to keep worrying about this incessant chit-chat of my inner critic. You've got to look like this. You don't look good enough. This is crap. This is crap. This is crap. All the time. It was living in hell. And what made it worse is that because I was sitting on it, I just pretended all the time. I was really, really good at pretending. That was kind of the slight downside to the drama. Yeah, I was really good at acting. So people would say like, how you doing? Yeah, great. The light and joy of every party, because I'd rock in with all of the energy and all of the vibes, but it wasn't real. I wasn't being authentic. I wasn't being genuine. I wasn't being authentic. And I remember just having that phone call with my mum. Was just like, Mum, I'm having the most terrible thoughts. Like, I need to go get some help. And that's kind of then when my recovery journey started. And what was interesting with the recovery journey, we're going back now around like 10 years. And during that time, in terms of eating disorder awareness and the services that were being provided, it was fairly minimum compared to what we have now. And even now, there are still a lot of pitfalls in terms of the help that people have access to and the effectiveness of the help that people have access to. And so I remember going to the doctors, and the lady said to me, what's going on? I was like, I'm having suicidal thoughts. And she was like, do you want to go on some antidepressants? And I was just like, you don't know. You don't know how to help me. You don't know what's going on. I'm not taking antidepressants. I'm going to go and figure this shit out for myself. And so that's what I did. And I saw a couple of people, but the majority of my recovery just came from me and my own journey, going on this, I'm going to call it the self-exploration journey, where I really started to tune in to be like, what happened? What happened? What haven't I dealt with? What am I still sitting on? And slowly but surely, it just started to heal. When I came out of that recovery, that's when I was like, man, there's something in this. I've been on an incredibly powerful journey. I have a very powerful story. And now I have such a desire to help people who have experienced or are experiencing what it was that I did. And that's why what I do means so much to me, because I've been there. So I know.
Rory, I want to quickly go back to a point you made about getting help back then was quite minimal, and even now it's quite sort of not as clear cut as you'd like. Would you still say there's a stigma surrounding the topic of eating disorders, like a misunderstanding perhaps?
I think there can be a misunderstanding, for sure. I think social media, as much as I have a love-hate relationship with it, I think it's been a great tool for spreading awareness. I mean, statistically, we've got, 1.25 million people in the UK who are currently struggling with eating disorders. And I think potentially the statistics could be higher, right? A lot of it, requires people to actually come forwards about these things. I think in terms of the stigma, it's probably more geared towards men, which that's been something in the limelight for a number of years, given the annual suicide statistics. 75% of annual suicides are male. So when it comes to mental health in general, and obviously eating disorders are a mental health related illness, there are a lot of men out there who aren't coming forwards. That was also something that I have made a priority in terms of coming forwards, because people saw me on this kind of pedestal. It's like Rory Brown, trainer, he's muscly, he's driving around in these whatever cars, and he's always happy all the time. So that's when I kind of broke all that down. I was just like, look, this is the truth. This was actually what was going on. And I think when you do that with guys, when I have those kind of conversations with guys, I see them like, soften. It's like, cool, you can be a man with me too, because it's incredibly powerful and courageous to speak your truth. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's been a real thing for me, is like putting my message and sharing my story with both men and women, so that they know that they don't need to hide from it. Because this is the piece around the shame. Yeah, it's shame that keeps things hidden. Shame is this sort of self-blame. Why am I like this? I hate that I'm like this, and I don't know what to do about it. So it's often shame that keeps people from opening up and being vulnerable.
Talking about your recovery process there, I think so stood out to me was just kind of that self-awareness piece almost. I feel like we lack this ability to ask ourselves sometimes the difficult questions. We like to bury them. We know the questions we need to ask ourselves, but it's just easier to bury them and carry on. And I feel like it takes a lot of mental fortitude almost to just sit there in silence and say, right, I need to ask myself these difficult questions. Because once you ask them to yourselves, you can then start a path of a solution and hopefully come out the other end. I mean, would you agree with that's kind of how you kind of did it, asking yourself those difficult questions?
I think that's certainly a key component to it. I like this formula that awareness precedes choice and choice precedes change. It is not until you are aware that you can start to address what essentially are these old subconscious patterns and behaviors. Remember, from a behavioral standpoint, in its simplest form, you master what you do often. So if it's a good habit or a bad habit, it's there because you've done it so many times. Habits are a byproduct. If we think about the formula, our thoughts create our beliefs. That's all beliefs are. Beliefs are not permanent. They are also not the truth. They are just your truth. So someone might have the belief, I'm not good enough. Well, that's just come from a thought process of telling them that's themselves so many times. Well, that's going to be based on all of our past experiences. Remember, this is where the majority of our human behaviors are formed, between these incredibly influential years of like 0 and 7, 7 and 14. Okay, those stages of life are big. This is when we learn a lot of our unhelpful patterns, and if left undealt with, we just continue to carry them without that level of awareness into adulthood. So yeah, this is when the self-inquiry piece is integral, because you cannot change that which you are unaware of.